Yeah, we watched, I shouldn't say we, I watched maybe a total, out of the 7 hours of testimony today, I was able to stomach maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes. Kathy, however, having a much higher tolerance for bullshit than I do, watched the whole thing. You watched the whole thing, right? And as a result of that, we are going to start tonight by having Kathy, um, after all the tweeting she did today, live tweeting, we're going to have Kathy give us kind of a report. Now, we don't have a camera to put on her, so we'll just have to listen to your dulcet tones there, Kathy. What's your bottom line assessment in one sentence? I want you to talk more, but in one sentence, what's your bottom line assessment of what you saw today?
It was as expected, I thought. I wasn't surprised. Excuse me, my dulcet tones. I still have some cold in my dulcet tones. I wasn't surprised by anything that Mueller said. I think he kept exactly to the report, which is what they expected him to do and what I expected him to do. And I thought the questions were very well organized. Obviously, they had practiced and practiced and practiced, especially the House Democrats this morning on the Judiciary Committee had clearly rehearsed exactly which obstruction count each member of Congress was going to address and took Robert Mueller through the details of his report point by point where he could only answer essentially yes or no and just reaffirmed it. I think the main purpose of the hearing today, and I think it accomplished this, was to get into the public record and purview and eye Robert Mueller asserting on camera, under oath, to the American people that he never exonerated President Trump. He never said no collusion. He never said there was no obstruction. He just said that there was insufficient evidence for collusion, and he called it, of course, conspiracy, and that obstruction of justice could not have been decided one way or the other because of the constraints of the memo. Yes.
When I'm doing this, I'm trying to get your
I see
attention.
your finger
Uh,
wagging.
uh, that's all well and good, and I'd like to hear your whole report. What I asked you was, in one sentence, what is your assessment of what happened? What is your assessment?
I think it was as good as an outcome as we could have gotten. I think it's
Okay.
the best we could have gotten from Robert Mueller under these circumstances. I think the fact that Barr put these restrictions on his ability to speak outside the
You have a
report.
you have a problem with one sentence.
What?
You have a problem with one
Oh, one
sentence,
sentence.
right?
Oh, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
well, let me just ask you a couple of things. What do you think is the next step in this national melodrama that Trump is up on his hind legs with his wee sticking out, declaring victory over the whole thing? The Fox News sewer is screeching their approval of how the Democrats have finally been defeated, yada, yada, yada. And we have an election coming up in 18 months. I mean, what do you think is going to happen now?
Well, that's something that it's. I think time's going to tell. I think it's a joke that anybody who was watching this with any kind of a critical eye, there's no way they could say this is some sort of victory for the president or for Fox News. And I thought that those Republicans, I think they'll go down in history this morning of just making apes of themselves. They all look like I did tweet this. I said they look like they were contestants on some improv show trying to do who could do the best Sean Hannity impersonation or Glenn Beck. I mean, they were all unhinged. They were screaming conspiracy theory ideas. They were over talking him. They were putting words in his mouth. It was embarrassing for them. And I think that ultimately, there's going to be that 30% who really wouldn't care if Trump shot somebody on Fifth Avenue. And those people are lost causes.
Well, I think it's more than 30%. My assessment has nothing to do specifically with the bit that I heard today or what you were telling me during the day. But my assessment is we have Trump's going to win a second term, and the
Well,
Republic
I
and the
know that.
Republican the Republicans are going to retake control of the House.
Well, I hope not. And I just I have to maintain some hope in the intelligence of the general American
No, no,
public.
no, don't do that.
And just, well, I mean, and just considering, I think that there are still moderate Republicans out there who would have seen something today. And I'll tell you something, by the second hearing, by the end of the House, um, um, not judiciary, intelligence. Good Lord, I'm
Intelligence,
sorry, I
yeah.
don't know why I was blanking. By the end of the intel, it's because I've watched 8 hours of hearings. The end of the Intel Committee hearing today, I thought that Devin Nunes looked defeated. He didn't even have any closing remarks. There was nothing he could say except thank the guy for his service and appreciated him showing up. There were a couple of times when Republicans on that committee, notably, just seemed a little flummoxed and like I don't know where to go from here, because I mean when you can't refute the facts, I mean, unless they want to look
You
like their
attack the
colleagues,
messenger,
right?
right?
Unless they want to look at their colleagues on the other side and just start screaming about the Illuminati or the deep state or what, I mean, it just make complete asses of themselves.
The one thing I noticed today in the bit that I did here and what you've told me, not a single Republican on either one of those committees denied that Trump had done what Mueller was accusing him.
No, they never addressed it at all. They just kept
Never.
going back to the
I heard Hillary
fusion
Clinton's name a couple
fusion
times.
GPS and Peter Strzok and all the Democrats on his team that contributed to Hillary Clinton. And I mean, it was just attacking Mueller and his team over and over again. They couldn't attack the facts. The facts are the facts. And they didn't speak a person to worrying about, well, there was one Republican, I will say, on the House Intel Committee that did seem to be a little bit concerned about the Russians' continued effort to attack our country. But no one else did.
Well, that's
And
not going to stop.
well, no,
That's
exactly, and
right.
it's ongoing. And I think that it's telling that, I just keep thinking history, in retrospect, we're going to look at this and realize that all of these people were just turning themselves into human pretzels to try to protect this orange con man for some unknown reason. And hopefully we'll find out one day why. Why they're so fierce. I did seem to get an impression today that maybe a couple of them were cracking, like, there's not really anywhere else they can go. They can't make up any crazier shit than they already have. They've really gone as deep as they can into the conspiracy nightmares. They've run out of defenses. So now they're just trying to say, well, the whole report was a hoax. And I thought Trump today looked, even more out of control than usual. They claimed he was in a good mood. Well, if that's a good mood, I'd hate to see him in a bad mood. He was very aggressive. He was getting very close to reporters and putting his fingers in their faces and saying, you're fake news, no one believes you, you're fake news. I mean, it was very confrontational and very hostile. And for him to be jumping around talking about it was the best day ever, I think his attitude belied that. I think that secretly they know that this is a very paper thin veil that they have over this president, and it's going to crumble, because you can't keep arguing. Obviously, the House Democrats are going to continue to hold hearings, so they're going to start subpoenaing more people who have more information, and they're going to try to get the release of documents and data and evidence to back up the Mueller report. And when that happens, and Mueller might come back to testify as a private citizen, it's a whole nother ball of
No,
wax.
Mueller emptied his shopping bag today. He's not going to come back.
Well, we might get other investigators from his team who would come and speak to the evidence.
Look. Let me just say this. As far as Trump, this tyrant, this dictator, this monster, as far as him imploding, it's going to take his dying in office. I mean, I have seen this before. Don't forget, I've been around for a long time. When a tyrant of the category of Trump gets to a certain level of their tyranny, they remain there. I mean, you take a look at any tyrant from any European country, any Asian country, any African country, any South American country. We have been lucky to have avoided this because of the strictures put on our political system by our Constitution. But if you look at all these other different continents and the countries within these continents, the history of these tyrants and how they are finally brought down, they're brought down in a very bloody, horrible, fucking convulsion of death and destruction. And I foresee this for the United States. I just, I've been talking now for the past year and a half that this is how it begins. This is what I said yesterday. This is how the rise of fascism and the destruction of even the idea of self-governance. This is how it begins. And this is what I'm afraid of. I don't see the American. You say the American people are smart enough to come out of this. They may be, but the American people don't give a fuck. We don't go vote. I mean, you and I do. The majority of Americans do not even vote. The only place that they can exert power is in massive numbers of Americans voting. What's considered a massive turnout during a presidential election? 65%? 70%? I mean, that's not enough to offset the core of the Trumpers. The Trumpers and the Christians who, for some satanic reason, support this son of a bitch, they will be out. They will be fucking church buses taking these people to the polls in 2020 to get Trump reelected. So I see the abyss. I mean, I really do. As far as Trump going away, he's going to have a heart attack. He's going to have to, I don't know, but he's not going to leave office. He's not going to be impeached. At least he won't be convicted if the Democrats finally do decide to impeach him, which I agree with some of the more cynical pundits that'll guarantee his reelection. This is it. Mueller could have stopped this. It was on him at any point in the past 22 months. Well, not the entire 22, but at some point, Mueller could have said, yeah, the President of the United States has committed impeachable offenses. He has obstructed justice. He has conspired with American enemies. He's conspired with people in this country to thwart the workings of the democratic system. At any point, he could have done it. And he chose this fucking mealy mouth. I don't know. Mueller to me is such a disappointment, but that's the way it goes.
Well, okay, and I understand that position, and I'm not saying I'm thrilled with all the way the report was conducted or managed, and I don't agree with the decision that a sitting president can't be indicted. I don't believe that he needed to be bound by that. I think that
destroys the idea that nobody's above the law.
Well, and I think one House member this morning, I believe, asked him, saying, well, does this mean then, for example, that if President Trump would have a second term and the statute of limitations is run out at that point during that second term, then he can never be held accountable? And I mean, and a rule like that clearly
Who did he ask that question to?
He was asking Robert Mueller.
And what Mueller said?
Well, Mueller's answer was something like that he couldn't speak to how the statute would be applied, and or whether or not judges would be able to extend something. I mean, and it's such a sticky, weird legal precedent because it's so odd, because it's absurd, sort of on its face. I mean, if the president killed somebody, you wouldn't say, well, we're just going to let him be president. And you could certainly argue that if the only reason he's president is by fraudulent means, then you would think that in those cases there would be a special circumstance for presidents who obtain the presidency illegally, that would be a special consideration. You wouldn't say you were bound by some OLC opinion if the president was only president because the Russians helped him steal the election. So the whole thing is prima facie absurd, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. But I think that what's going to happen is if he's not impeached, I'm terrified that you might be right, and only because we seem to have collectively lost our minds as a country. I don't know why we're not in the streets like the Puerto Ricans. I don't know why it didn't happen after Charlottesville. I don't know why it didn't happen after we discovered children had been separated from their parents at the border, migrants seeking asylum, and their children had been sent to adoption centers as far away as Michigan. I don't understand why no one's done anything yet.
Well,
that's
kind of.
If we don't do anything, then this is what we're going to get if he's not impeached.
That's kind of my, I guess, my point. And don't forget, impeachment is only indictment.
Exactly.
It doesn't, just because he gets impeached doesn't mean he's removed from office.
And that's another point. I don't know what the problem is. Impeach him. He has committed impeachable offenses. If the Senate doesn't convict him, that's on them. Then they are colluding. Then they look like
But that doesn't
criminals.
matter.
Down the road, history will say, well, look at what the Senate failed to do.
See, this is where I'm much more of a cynic and a fatalist than you are. Down the road is total fascism. Down the road is Orwell's 1984. Down the road is a complete revamping, revising of history. All of this is going to be just wiped away.
I don't think so.
Oh,
No, I
well,
disagree there. I do disagree there. I don't think this is something that we're ever going to forget. I think this is something that's going to be indelibly imprinted on the fabric of our American
well, what I'm
history.
saying is if this monster continues in office, and he's not going to leave. I mean, he's not going to leave.
Well, I agree he'd never go willingly.
I'm as well, and
I mean, they might have to drag him out.
well, that's not.
I mean, literally, if he were,
But if he-
if by some reason, if he were convicted in the Senate and refused to get out of the Oval Office,
He's not
then I
going to
think
be
someone would
convicted.
have to
Kathy,
pull him out.
Kathy, he's not going to be
Well, let's see
convicted.
what public
Look,
opinion
the
says.
sons of bitches in the Senate won't even concede that he committed crimes. How are they going to convict him of something they don't even believe happened? So it's never, ever, he's never going to be removed from office. Never. And since he's not going to be removed, the son of a bitch is not going to leave. And my point is, dictators like this, they do revise history. And it's not just them. It's their supporters. They're supporters in government. They're supporters in this fucking shithole called religion. The supporters in academia, and he has them. They completely rewrite the story to where this Christian president of the United States, who is only trying to protect the country, was attacked by left-wing communist socialist scum like AOC, like Gerald Nadler. And that's how the history is rewritten. And by the time this does become an historical event, there's nobody around to refute it. There's nobody around to say, no, that's not the way it happened. This is my worry.
Well, we'll see. I mean,
No, you and I
there-
won't
there's-
see.
There's no. Well, maybe we will. Maybe. I mean, I really do believe that there will be some implications. I have to believe that maybe, but I think that history will remember this one way or the other, and however we end up on the other side, they will not. History will not judge kindly the Republicans in the Senate and the House who chose this orange con man over truth and justice and patriotism and defending our country from foreign attack. I've never thought I'd live to see a day when the party of Reagan was shouting at a Vietnam veteran, a decorated Vietnam veteran, and essentially calling him either a fool or a liar, and calling his entire staff fools and liars and potential criminals, and while defending the Vladimir Putin's
But you're making my
regime,
point.
Russia, and you know, it was surreal. And I think that history will be objective when judging those people and looking down and saying there was a time in this country where this populist, this racism, this racist reaction to the Obama administration came out in the most ugly way possible. We elected this Archie Bunker and gave him the nuclear codes, and he colluded with Russia and almost damn near got away with it, or did get away
Well,
with
let
it.
me ask you, with all
But
due
I
respect.
don't think it'll ever be swept under the rug.
Okay, with all due respect, who writes history? The winners.
I don't know. There's an awful
No,
lot
no,
of,
there's no ifs, ands, or buts
there's an
about
awful
it.
lot of history books out there, Mike, Howard Zinn and whatever, that
Okay.
are not written by the winners.
Okay, but the real history, the documented history, the history that, sure, there's Howard Zinns out there. How many of them does it take to turn 330 million people, or whatever the population of the United States is going to be at some point? And plus the fact that Trump is so out of control now. This is the type of guy who is so fucked in the head that he is going to look at what happened today, as he's been tweeting, that this was a further example of his victory. Now he's going to feel that he can do anything. What did he say the other day about nuking 10 million people
In Afghanistan.
in
but
Afghanistan? Yeah, I
he's
can end this
he's
war in a
choosing
week.
he's choosing not to, as if it were up to him
Right.
whether or not 10 million people
Right.
would be dead. He also said the Second Amendment lets him do whatever he wants. I mean, he's a psychopath.
You understand?
Obviously.
You're
He's a
making
psychopath.
you're making
No,
my
no,
argument.
I know he's a psychopath. I don't think history will forget that he was
And
a psychopath.
nobody is around to remove the psychopath. The one group that could, his own political party, will not.
Okay, well then,
Ever.
then somehow we have to create an overwhelming force at the ballot box.
Well, all right. Well, thanks for your assessment. I appreciate it. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.